It's Riley.
It's Sloan.
It's Briar. Hang on to your broomsticks. It's about to get eerie.
Today's episode could contain themes and elements uncomfortable to some listeners. Please check the episode description and remember to always take care of yourself.
So this episode will be posted on December 7th, which means that it's time for all the Christmas festivities.
Oh yeah.
But knowing us, you know that we cannot just talk about the jolly old Santa Claus, and we've decided to spend the month of December filling you guys in on different Yuletide season creatures, and I'm going to be kicking it off. So just as a little disclaimer, the lore I'm talking about is from the Alps region, so if the names I mention are incorrect, I'm sorry. But the being I'm going to be talking about is Frau Perchta, and she was once a goddess in Alpine paganism and was found in the Alps region of Germany and Austria. Perchta is often identified as being very similar to the Germanic goddess Holda. Some actually refer to Perchta as Holda's southern cousin or equivalent because they both share the same role as guardian of the beast and appear during the 12 days of Christmas when they oversee spinning.
Like yarn?
Yes. Flack is what I think it
Like
says.
twine?
Yeah.
Maybe. One of those things.
Something like that.
So she's the dolly. The dolly of the alpine creatures.
Yeah. But Frau Perchta was actually popularized by the Brothers Grimm. And their story was referred to as Frau Hall.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. So, Frau Perchta actually means shining one, but she has different names, some being Perida, Birchta, Berta, Frau Fast, which means the Lady of the Ember Days, Peta, Viternica, Posterly, and some more. And is also known as the Belly Slitter, which you'll hear why she's called that.
That got dark real fast.
Yeah. She is not the dolly. She's not Dolly.
Yeah, no. So, Frau Perchta is often depicted with a beaked nose made of iron. And dressed in rags, sometimes carrying a cane, and resembles a decrepit, old, skinny, and usually ugly woman.
With an iron nose.
With an iron nose.
I mean.
Yes. But this old woman packs a punch and carries a long knife hidden under her dress.
She ain't playing.
Yeah. And she has two forms, which is the elderly and cadaverous woman, or she might also appear as a beautiful and white as snow woman, which gives her another nickname, sometimes being referred to as the woman in white. And in old descriptions, she's said to have one large foot called a goose foot, or a or a swan foot.
No, wait. So
she's got an iron beak,
an iron nose.
Oh, an iron
nose, and one
large goose foot, or swan foot.
Just one.
And
is it just the foot, or is it a leg? I remember when I think of a goose foot, I actually think of their whole leg.
I don't know. I think it's,
or it's just the flippers.
I didn't see much. All that I could see referred to as was goose foot or swan foot. There was no more. There was no extra like goose foot and leg, like looking like a little Affleck duck walking around. Yeah,
a goose foot.
Yes. So the Brothers Grimm actually thought that her goose foot, swan foot symbolized her being a higher being who could shapeshift into an animal form.
Oh, so she just walked around with a goose foot so she could be like, yeah, check this out.
Yeah.
Like,
she's like,
I could do it if I wanted.
Yeah, if I wanted.
But I'm just going to give you a taste.
Yeah. Just
check out my
little,
goose foot.
Just a little. So I wonder if it is a leg. She pulls it up from under her skirt.
Showing it like, hey. Look what I can do. Check out my goose foot.
So, now, with the knowledge of one of her nicknames being the Belly Slitter, I'm sure you're curious of what she does.
Yes.
So, Frau Perchta is considered to be the personification of Epiphany, and she's known to be a rewarder of the generous, and a punisher of the lazy, the liars, and the greedy. And it was essential to Perchta that everyone not work on her feast day, and have a great meal of fish and gruel, and socialize with the community. And Frau Perchta is not a fan of introverts, or the disrespect of not eating on her feast day. So if you didn't, she would make sure you had a full belly. She would slit open the bellies of her victims, hence the name, belly slitter, pull out their intestines, and fill their guts with straw and rocks. Or, some say garbage.
Okay. I mean, she could have just slapped him with a goose foot, but...
Yeah.
But no. She just...
stuffing your...
Now, is that why she had an iron nose?
No, she used the sword.
Oh, her knife!
Yeah.
Her
skirt knife.
Her skirt knife.
Yeah. And this was also the punishment if you forgot to leave a bowl of porridge out for her, if your flax was half spun or unfinished. And she, quite ironically, hates the lazy, but you better make sure you don't do any work on her feast day. So, like, all the other time, you better be busting your butt. But, like, on her feast day, you better not touch the flax. You better not be spinning anything.
You eat and you don't spin.
Yeah.
I have a question. Does it ever go into why she has an iron nose?
No, I didn't see anything, like, explaining why she had an iron nose. A lot of stuff says she wears a mask. So I'm wondering if it's, like
the medicine...
That's what I picture when
thing.
you say the nose.
Yeah.
But that's kind of because it's one of those images that always pops in your head.
And she also punished women for unkept households.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Oh, I'm screwed.
But what Frau Perchta probably hated the most was children who lied.
Huh?
So, lying kids would have their tongues cut with glass.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Yeah. But she's not all that bad. Perchta was not all about just the punishment. If you were in her standards of good, you would get rewarded with a small silver coin. So
a single coin.
Yes, a single coin. So to recap, if you did not do enough spinning for the year, or did work on her feast day, you'd get gutted like a fish and filled with trash or rocks and straw. But if you were good and did what you were supposed to do and work hard enough, she'd give you a silver coin. Like what I'm thinking, the equivalent of like a dime.
Not even a quarter. You get a dime.
Yeah.
You know what? You enjoyed the feast. Here's a dime. You lie. Whoosh!
Done.
With the glass. Now I've got questions. Where's the glass come from? Where's all this garbage she's stuffing people come from?
I have a couple
carry it
stories, and in the story it talks about how, like, she pulls out a sack that she just carries around full of stuff.
Garbage and glass. Yeah. Dragging her goose foot around. I can appreciate a woman who is demanding of the holiday being all about her.
Yeah. And I was kind of curious because I was like, I'm not very familiar with, like, the 12 days of Christmas, but it's January 6th is when she comes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the day of Epiphany. So she comes on that day. I just thought that was something I should probably mention because I wasn't very familiar with it.
So is that her feast day?
That's her feast day, yeah. Because the 5th is Epiphany Eve, is what I found, and then Epiphany is the 6th, and in one of the stories, she seems to come after your feast.
So she rolls up in there.
Yeah.
Like, ready for a party. And she slices and dices.
As needed.
And she's like, you having a good time? Here's a coin.
Yeah.
What, you lied? Okay.
Tongue sliced.
What are you doing? Are you spinning over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me check your spinning work.
Yeah. Did you eat enough? You didn't eat enough? Okay.
Where's my porridge?
Yeah.
Did you leave me some out? Better still be warm.
There could be a whole feast, but I better have a bowl of porridge. If not, gutted. You're done.
So, in modern culture, Perchta is still portrayed as a rewarder of the generous and a punisher of the bad. And still in one region of Austria, she is said to wander through Hohenzolsberg Castle in the dead of night, and the Perchten, are still a tradition and part of the holiday festivals. So the Perchten are, like, kind of her little henchmen, which I'll get in a little bit. And they follow her around, pretty much.
Wait, so is she still celebrated, or it's broke off just to them, mostly, in modern?
Well, how they're celebrated is with their festivals, and there's a large procession of Schön Perchten, which means beautiful Perchten, and Scheocht Perchten, which means ugly Perchten. And they're held every winter, and there's beautiful mask to manifest financial success, and the ugly mask to ward off evil spirits.
Okay.
So it's still to ward off her, and to, like, try to, like...
Appease her?
Appease her, yeah.
Because ain't nobody want their belly slit open and stuff full of garbage.
But, so she's still kind of being celebrated current times. So, another thing is called the Wild Hunt. And in case you don't know what the Wild Hunt is, because I didn't before I did research, it is a folklore motif that historically presents itself in the folklore of different Northern European cultures. And it typically involves a soul-raving chase led by a mythological figure escorted by a ghostly or supernatural group of hunters passing in wild pursuit. And seeing the Wild Hunt was thought to foretell some sort of catastrophe like war, plague, or even just the death of the one who witnessed it. And an individual encountering the hunt would also be abducted to the underworld or the fairy kingdom.
Oh. The fatal play.
No, they do not.
And it was also believed that people's spirits could be pulled away during their sleep, and they would join the Wild Hunt. But how this pertains to Frau Perchta is some say that she flies through the night sky, followed by an army of lost souls, including her demon-like Perchten, which is what I was talking about, which are her army of servants who pretty much look identical to Krampus.
Okay.
So if you look at them, that's kind of what the masks look like, too, when you see all that. And among her army, alongside the others, are the souls of unbaptized children. So, and what I looked more into that, because I was kind of curious, and it's like, if they died before they were baptized, she would kind of take them in, so they wouldn't, because they couldn't go to heaven, where they weren't baptized, at least in that belief, so she would bring them with her.
So they became her little army. Interesting. That's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So she's not really, she's aggressive.
Yeah.
But she's not bad.
Yeah, she's not, no. Just make sure you get your work done before her feast day.
She's just high maintenance.
Yeah.
She just wants her demands met.
And legend has it, if you hear the wind and thunder roaring and rumbling through the mountains on the Birchtal nights, which are the last 3 Thursdays before Christmas, and they're also known as knocking nights, you're actually hearing the sounds of Perchta leading the Wild Hunt.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. Because it's pretty much like, if you're hearing any rumbling or roaring through the mountains, all of December pretty much,
that's what it is.
It's Perchta. So, I was looking for some stories, and I found 2. And the first one is a story of a farmhand that really demonstrates the fickle nature of Frau Perchta. So, the owner of the house, the farmhand, had a room prepared for Frau Perchta and her entourage of Perchten to stay the night. And the farmhand, hearing of Perchta's beauty, wanted to see if he could see her. Because one of her forms is the beautiful woman in white. He just wanted to see her. So he hid in the stove in her room.
Where's her room?
In his house.
He has a room?
He prepared a room for her to come stay in.
Okay. And just left out porridge. I'm just assuming. I'm putting things.
It just said he
play.
had the room prepared. So I'm assuming porridge, his finished up spinning, like all the stuff. He had all the stuff.
That's commitment, though. You're hiding in the stove so you can glance at her.
So when Perchta entered the room, she saw that there was a hole in the side of the stove and had one of her men, like one of her followers, one of her Perchten, go plug the hole. And now the farmhand's view was blocked, so he was forced to spend the night in darkness. And in the morning, when Perchta and her Perchten left, he exited the stove and realized he was blind. So, like, she knew he was in there and blinded him. And the next year, he was like, okay. Hid in the stove again. and the plug was still in the hole. And when she entered the room, she ordered her follower to unplug the hole in the stove, and the next morning, the farmhand's sight was restored.
So she was like, you ain't gonna get one over on me.
Yeah.
So your punishment, you're gonna spend a year blind. And then she's like, you know what? That's commitment. He got back in that stove.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, the second story I found.
Honestly, sorry to interrupt
Oh,
you.
go
I
ahead.
thought that they were gonna burn him alive.
Oh, I was like, she's gonna eat him.
That's where I thought that
She gonna eat
story
him.
was
No,
going.
just teaching him a lesson before the belly slitting.
Yeah. He must have prepared some good porridge.
Yeah.
She's like, nah, I'm just gonna blind you.
For a year.
For you.
Now, this other story I found is from Reddit, so I'm not sure. I'm assuming it's not real, but I think it really, shows the child aspect of Frau Perchta. So I'm just going to read it from what I found. And I kind of cut out some bits that just didn't really pertain to the story of what I wanted. So, I can still remember my mother's look when I told her I wanted to invite Lucy to spend the holidays with us. She furrowed her brow in a way that she did when she was thinking something is a bad idea. Are you sure you want to invite Lucy, dear? Of course I'm sure. She's my best friend, Mom. She let the water run over her hands for a few seconds, washing the potatoes she'd been making for dinner. I know she's your best friend, but Lucy can be a little... She seemed to contemplate her words. Much, sometimes. How long will she be staying? This is an odd question from my mother, usually charitable, but I knew it was that time of year that had her nervous. It was the 29th of December, Christmas now, in the rearview mirror, and New Year's looming on the horizon, and my family was 4 days into celebrating the 12 nights of Christmas. My family is Christian, but the sect we belong to believes in the significance of the 12th night. The 12th night was marked by the Feast of Epiphany. We spend most of the day at service, singing songs and praising God, but that night we had a large meal and Mother always makes a turtle to celebrate the occasion. That's also the night that Frau Perchta visits us, and that can be a tumultuous time all its own. Not a lot of people celebrate the 12th night. Christmas is usually the highlight of the season, but it is a religious tradition my mother and father brought from France when they moved here, and it's been a part of my life for so long that it seems normal to me. To my knowledge, Lucy's family was not religious at all, so Lucy was looking forward to seeing what our holidays were like. Her family will be back on the 10th, just in time for the end of Christmas break, I said, almost pleading with her not to reconsider. My mother looked at her potatoes as she worked. She knows that it's not all fun and games, right? We go to church a lot on those days, and the celebration is mostly religious. I nodded. Yes, I assured her. She knows it's not all fun and games. That wasn't a complete lie. Lucy had been interested in my family's quaint holiday customs, and I tried to tell her how this time of year was important to my family. There had been a lot of questions in my class about the 12 nights of Christmas. I had told them how it had to do with the nativity play and less to do with the song. How we had the traditional turtle, a pastry with a pea in it, and how if you found the pea, you would be the queen for the evening. I usually found it, and my parents made a game of me being queen for the night and parading me around the house. Lastly, I told them about Frau Perchta, the old woman who would visit us on the 12th night and give out presents to good children. I believe this was the reason Lucy wanted to stay with me instead of Chelsea or Maggie. Lucy saw an opportunity to get some sort of second Christmas and wanted to use my holiday to get more presents. I wasn't too offended by the idea. I liked extra gifts too, but the idea of her using Frau Perchta to get them made me feel a little funny. Not guilty, but not good either. Lucy was used to dealing with a kind and generous gift giver, but Frau Perchta was not a benevolent, jolly being. The Frau was a little scary, and I had only just gotten comfortable around her myself. She was a gift-giving entity, which was nice, but she also had a stick that my parents would use to correct me when I was bad. Unlike Santa, the Frau was not just a Christmas entity either. The Frau was always watching, always judging, and they used her year-round when I stepped out of line. Better behave, Frau Perchta will see. Better put that candy back, you wouldn't want me to tell the Frau. Better get to sleep before Frau Perchta knows that you're naughty. I had never incurred the wrath of the Frau, but Mom said that she would switch me if I were naughty, and she told me stories of a sister that had gone missing after being especially willful one year. Frau Perchta was a coin with two faces, and one of those faces had teeth. Mom nodded stiffly. Far be it from me to turn away a guest during the holidays. Just make sure she's on her best behavior. You know how the Frau feels about willful children. I shuddered as she said the word, remembering the sister she had never seen again. Lucy arrived 2 days later, and her parents thanked mine for agreeing to let her stay. They were going to see a friend out of town, to places where Lucy would be relegated to a back room of strange children while their parents gathered. They offered my parents money for her food and board, but they waved it away. Lucy was our guest, and they were glad to have her. Her parents smiled at that, kissed their daughter goodbye, and they were off to the airport to catch their flight. My parents and I helped Lucy up to my room, Lucy having brought enough luggage for a month, and I showed her the cot we had set up for her and the spot in my closet I had emptied for her. She made appreciative noises right up until my parents left, and then scoffed at the idea of sleeping on a saggy old cot. I saw her eyeballing my canopy bed before she made her intentions known. As a guest, it would be generous for you to let me use your bed.
As a guest, you can sleep on the floor, Lucy.
I'm glad to see, hear what happens
Yeah,
now.
let's get on with it. You was in trouble.
But then where would I sleep, I asked, not quite understanding the trade-off. There was no way we could share a bed. The mattress felt too small for me sometimes. I looked at the floor, but wrinkled my nose at the idea of sleeping there. I wasn't a messy child, but sleeping on the floor seemed like a great way to roll over a Lego or a Barbie shoe. Well, why don't you sleep on the cot? It'd be like on holiday, she said, sitting her bag on the foot of the bed, telling me about the Barbies she brought to play with and the DVDs she had for us to watch, as I took my princess blanket and pillow and set it on the cot. My mother thought it was very sweet of me to let Lucy use the bed. I smiled and told her it was the right thing to do for a guest, but the cot was lumpy and I slept poorly. I thought mean things at Lucy every time I saw her snug in my bed, but I was careful to cut those kind of thoughts off pretty quickly. Such things might be willful, and I wasn't sure if Frau Perchta could read minds, but I wasn't in a big hurry to find out either.
Me either.
The first week went by pretty quickly. Lucy was always polite and well-behaved around my parents, but she was a bit of a brat in private. Lucy complained about our food being too bland, our house too cold, and the service we dragged her to every night were too dull. I had seen my father shoot her some dark looks as she sat in the pew beside me and sighed or fidgeted, but he was too kind to ever say much. She seemed to find our services quaint but boring and was always ready to go when it was time to leave. On New Year's, Mum and Dad let us stay up with them until midnight and toast to the new year with sparkling cider. Lucy told me about how last year she and her parents had been in Paris for the new year, and her mother had let her drink some of her champagne when the clock struck midnight. I asked her what it tasted like, and she said low so my parents didn't hear her, "It tastes better than this gross juice," and stuck out her tongue and laughed.
I'm gonna need Lucy to, take a step back. I don't have words.
This next part's a little better. She went to set her glass down, and I saw it tip over and spill onto the carpet. She picked it up quickly, and my mother saw the stain before she saw the glass. "Oh no! Who spilled grape juice on my carpet?" Lucy pointed the finger at me. "It was an accident, ma'am. She didn't mean to."
Oh.
No, she didn't.
I started to become indignant, but Lucy gave me a pitiful look that communicated clearly that she didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't say anything, and Mum made me get a towel to help clean it up. When they yelled Happy New Year, I looked up quickly, having missed the ball drop as I dabbed the spot.
No, she missed the ball drop because of Lucy.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't whisper to her that night, and I think she knew I wasn't happy with her.
While she's sleeping on her lumpy clot.
Yeah. The second week was the worst. Lucy began to complain about the daily trips to church, and even my father's good mood had started to stretch thin. We had a neighbor who agreed to watch her while we went to church. I was honestly a little glad for the time away from Lucy. Her complaints about our food, it being too bland, or being the same thing every day, were starting to wear on my mother as well, and I could see her counting the days until Lucy's parents came to get her. Mum became a little weird where Lucy was concerned. I heard her calling her parents a few times, telling them how much Lucy missed them and asked when they were coming back. Lucy had made no such claims. She was clearly enjoying being our guest, and her parents coming back was the furthest thing from her mind. Despite Mum's best effort, it appeared that Lucy would be with us through the weekend. Mum didn't seem too happy about this, and I wondered if she was worried about what the Frau would make of Lucy.
I think Mama knows what's to
Mama
come.
knows.
She knows.
The day of the 12th night arrived, and the house was filled with low excitement. Lucy and I were relegated to my bedroom so the house would stay clean. Lucy complained about this, of course, and kept asking me questions about the feast, what kind of food we would have, when the princess cake would be served, which is what she had started calling the tortle. Would the Frau be here to give presents before or after the meal? Would we have to go to church to get the gifts? She went on and on until finally I told her I didn't know, or it would depend. I was tired of her being here, and I wanted her to leave. So here's a little, I cut out a little chunk here, but basically it was just explaining her church service and that Lucy had went to stay with a sitter, and then they got back from church. When they got back, Lucy was dressed in a similar white dress when we got home, a gift from my family to her for the feast. Lucy complained about the dress almost at once, saying it didn't fit, it was too baggy, and then the hem was too long, and she kept tripping over it. But my mother mostly ignored her as I helped her get the food on the table. So she, was complaining.
About everything.
Yeah.
About everything.
Yeah. That was a gift. The dress was a gift from the writer's family. Then we prayed over the meal and sat down to enjoy our feast. Of course, the turtle was the centerpiece. They all dug in, and it was the first time I had heard Lucy stop talking in days. She ate a little of everything, her eyes sliding again and again to the turtle, but who could blame her? The pastry glistened with sugar and looked delicious. When we had all eaten as much as we could, Mum cut the turtle and served us all a piece. Now remember, if you find the pea, you get to be royalty for the evening, she reminded us. We all dug in, savoring the tasty tart, and I expected to find the pea with every bite. I think, even then, I believed that my parents let me have the pea every year so I could be the princess of the feast. And as I saw my tart become smaller and smaller, I began to wonder if they had moved it this year. Lucy was eating as well, but I saw her hand slide into her pocket as she ate, clenching something. Suddenly she sat up, bringing her hand out of her pocket and proclaiming how she had found the pea. I could only gape at my parents as they congratulated her. Had she just cheated to get to be the princess of the feast? I didn't have long to gape, however, since she had turned to me grinning. There was a light tap at our door. Mom stiffened, looking at Lucy and me, saying, "Frau Perchta has arrived."
Let me go back a minute. To this heifer sneaking a pea into her turtle.
Listen, not just any pea. Let me get there.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah. So the mom stiffened and looking at Lucy and the writer and said, "Frau Perchta has arrived." She and Dad left the table heading for the door, but I stopped Lucy as she started to get up. "You cheated. Why would you do that?" "Duh, your parents would have probably just given you the piece with the pea in it. While you were at church, I lifted the corner and saw it in the corner of the piece she gave you, so I took it and put it in my pocket for later. It wasn't fair that you get to just win, so I cheated just like your parents were going to. Now step aside, peasant. Your princess is off to get her presents."
I want to knock her out.
Oh my god.
I want to knock her
So
out.
not only, stole it from... Oh.
I thought it was bad enough when I thought she just had a freak pea in her pocket.
That's what I thought too.
And was just cheating and throwing a pea in it.
Stole the flippin' pea from her plate. And called her a peasant.
Yeah.
I'm like, "You're the peasant," and shoved the pea up her nostrils.
I want to hear what happens. I want to see what happens.
Let's keep going.
And with that, she skipped off towards the living room. I had little choice but to follow her. Frau Perchta, as I've said, has always scared me a little. She was dressed in a habit, a long white shawl covering her face and framing the ghastly-looking mask that she wore. The mask was made of dark wood, looking ancient and resembling a smiling ogre. She was hunched, using a cane to get around, and leaned forward in the chair as she beckoned me forward with a gnarled hand. "Come forward, child." I took a step, her voice sounding like dry leaves in a hollow log. Lucy stepped forward instead.
"You're gonna die in there."
Standing before the Frau and jutting her chin out. "Hey, I was here first. I should get my gifts before her." My mother sucked in a breath, and my father's eyes got very wide as his skin seemed to pale.
And everybody crapped their pants.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh!"
The mask bent to look at Lucy, and the wooden thing did not like what it saw. "Run along, child. You are not of my ilk, and I would not judge you by my rules." Lucy huffed out an angry breath. "Hey, I was promised presents from you. What, I don't get presents just because I'm not part of this place?" The wearer of that mask sucked in a long, suffering breath and looked at Lucy icily.
She gave you a chance, girl.
I mean,
she gave you a flippin' chance.
You should have You should have taken you no presents. You and your pea and went and celebrated. You and your pea can go have a good time in the canopy bed.
"Clearly, you are not of this place, child. If you were, you would know that it is wise to treat me with respect when I honor a household with my presence." "Oh, so I'm just supposed to accept that you didn't bring me anything?" She brought the pea out of her pocket and waved it in front of the masked face. "I'm the princess of the feast, and I want my gifts. I'm royalty today, and you can't tell a princess no," she said Hauntily. Sorry,
my-
your guys' faces.
I am without words. She has the audacity to act that way.
To wave that pea
To wave that little pea.
in Frau Perchta's face.
I hope she bites it off. Bite it off. Bite off those fingers.
Oh
Okay,
my gosh.
we're getting to the good
And
bit.
be like, Merry Christmas, punk.
Let's hear it.
Her bluster melted away when the old woman's hand wrapped around her slender neck.
Oh.
Even if you were the grandest princess in all the land, I answer to a higher power and will not be spoken to in such a way by you. You wish to have my gifts? Prepare to receive them. She stooped no longer, and carried Lucy's struggling body over to the coffee table. She shoved the magazines and knickknacks off the table and slammed the struggling girl onto the surface. I looked at my parents, but froze in horror and surprise before screaming for them to do something. My father looked at my mum, nudging her and whispering something to her that brought her out of her trance. She moved in front of me, blocking the scene from view, and whispering soothing words to me as my friend gagged and screamed.
Yeah, she was like, she's gonna die. She's gonna die in here.
Through the crook of my mother's arm, I could see the old woman take a knife from beneath her robe and lift it over the struggling girl.
Skirt knife!
Her reddening face was terrified, seeing the knife preparing to gut her, and she struggled all the harder. She looked at my mother, and her dry voice cracked out, bringing her back around to face her. Do not shelter that girl. Let her see what befalls to those who cross the white. Mom looked down at me, clearly not wanting me to see what was about to happen, but moved aside obediently. When I caught sight of the Frau's face, I put my hands over my mouth to stifle a scream. The ogre mask was an improvement compared to what lay beneath. Lucy struggled frantically. She was aware, it seemed, that this was no joke, and that neither her parents nor my parents were going to swoop in and save her. Lucy had found someone who would not give her a pass because she was young and pretty. She had found a creature to which things did not matter. Lucy had learned too late that sometimes it's best not to keep poking a bear when it gives you a chance to run. When the knife came down, it seemed to surprise her all over again. The old woman cut into her gut, sticking the knife blade first into the table and dragging out handfuls of ropey entrails. She threw them on the ground, Lucy twitching and convulsing as her life bled away. The Frau reached behind her to grab a scratchy sack I hadn't noticed before. She opened the sack, spilling sticks and pine cones, old wrappers, and vegetable pills into the opening before taking out a long bone needle and stitching Lucy closed.
I hope she put the pea in there.
When she finished, Frau Perchta sat in her chair once more and motioned me over. I didn't want to go. I had just seen this woman kill one of my best friends, but my mother pushed me towards her and gave me a nervous look that said all it needed to. I approached her chair on rubbery legs, trying not to look at Lucy's bloated form as I passed. The Frau held out her hand, the blue fingers streaked with gore, and I heard the clink of coins. I held out my hand, not wanting her to touch me. She let 4 large coins fall into my hand. They, too, were bloodied, my gift holding its own little warning as she offered it to me. You are a good child. Now that I am pleased by your charity and your pure heart, fear not. I will take care of that one, she said, indicating Lucy. But you will need to make proper excuses, she said to my mother and father. They both nodded and shunted me to my bed, my numb fingers still gripping the coins. I expected to find Lucy in my room, asleep under her blankets, but she and her things were all gone. Her bags had been taken away, her bedding and clothes were missing, and when I went downstairs, the living room was spotless. My parents were in the kitchen, their garb from the night before were nowhere to be seen. My mother was on the phone with the police filing a missing person report. Her voice held nothing but honest emotions, and that's likely why nothing was ever said about the incident other than regret. She left in the night, officer. We woke up to find her things gone and the front door open. Well, she had been feeling homesick, but we didn't think she would just up and disappear. We've searched for her since dawn when my husband noticed she was missing. No, not a sign of her. Yes, I called her mother and let her know. They're on their way back now. Yes, please, officer. If you find anything, let us know. Thank you. Sweetie, we need to talk to you about what happened last night. They told me everything. She told me the old stories about how Frau Perchta would reward good children and punish those who were willful. Mom told me that she had seen her sister punished in the way such as Lucy. The body and the mess gone by morning, but not forgotten, and certainly not gone forever. They found her body a few months later, buried in a snowdrift. It was one of the reasons that I left the community when I was old enough. The police might not know what had happened to her, but I did, and the community certainly did. When the coroner found sticks and rocks sewn inside her, the community knew that my mother had raised one of the willful ones. I'd hoped that by leaving I would be able to flee the traditions of my people, but when the Frau arrived at my door, my first feast away from home, I knew there was no escaping her. She looked at me, her eyes full of pity and resolve. You will have to do the same. This is your life now, and it won't end just because you leave it. The Frau is our burden, the gift given by my family generations ago, and she cannot be escaped. When you have children of your own, you must remember this night and raise them to respect the white. You know the consequences of failure now. If the police ask you what happened to Lucy, you just tell them the truth. Tell them you haven't seen her since last night, and leave it at that. And so I did. So I have been doing for years. I am a married woman now, and I have children of my own, and I've raised them both to revere and fear the yearly visits of Frau Perchta. My children are good kids, and I will never make the same mistake my mother made on that day when I was young. I will never allow outsiders to stay at my house for the holidays, and I will never let my children know the dark secrets I keep inside.
That gave me goosies when she was like, she showed up, even when she tried to leave. I was like, ooh.
So, like I said before, this story's from Reddit, and we'll have it linked on our website.
That was a good one. That one, Lucy got what she had coming.
You got 2 chances. She gave you 2 chances just to run along.
Yeah. But I thought that was a really good story to show, like, the kind of stuff that she views as bad in children. And
she's like, get out of my face. And then she was like, here's your coins, kid. Good kid. 4 coins.
So now, off that story, and on to some influences of Perchta. So there were, and still could be, people dedicated to honoring Perchta. Back when she was a common household name, there was actually a religious group called the Cult of Perchta, and the group would regularly leave food and drinks out for her to consume in the night during the 12 days of Christmas, hoping to earn her good graces and receive abundance as their reward. But in the 1400s, the cult was condemned in Bavaria, and her worship was outlawed. So, they kind of like...
They're like, no.
So, it's also said that Frau Perchta may be one of the oldest supernatural entities associated with winter holidays and could have possibly influenced later stories like Krampus and St. Nicholas and all the traditions that go along with them. But this is kind of debated because some say that she's been mentioned in regions of Germany as early as the 10th century, but then others say her name and design are too closely related to the Feast of Epiphany, so that there's not pre-Christian origin. But her origin is really muddy, so there's no for sure answer of, like, where she came from. So, my thinking of the idea of Frau Perchta and Krampus is that her Perchten in the Wild Hunt and who follow her around are basically identical to Krampus. So I thought that's kind of a good way to segue into another more well-known holiday being, and that's Krampus, and I'm going to go over some similarities and stuff. So, the history of Krampus has also been theorized to stretch back to pre-Christian Alpine traditions. So, coming from the same area. The Krampus's name is derived from the German word Krampen, which means claw, and he is said to be the son of Hel in Norse mythology. Krampus is said to walk the streets with St. Nick or by himself the night before St. Nicholas Day, which is December 6th. Krampus appears in many variations, but most have common physical characteristics, being he is hairy, brown or black, has cloven hooves, and horns of a goat. He has a long pointed tongue and fangs, which is very similar to the Perchten of Frau Perchta.
Her little army.
Yeah, and you can look at pictures of them.
When I think of Krampus, I always think of... what's really funny is I can't decide if this is my image of Krampus or if it's the Gargoyle King from Riverdale. But doesn't he have, like, long claws? Because you said he had, like, hooven feet.
Yeah. He has arms, I'm pretty sure.
Well, like, isn't it like long, spindly, like, sticky, like... And I always think of, like, he's hunched over with his cloak, and he has one hand with these long, sticky, creepy fingers sticking out, like claws.
Yeah.
But I also, like I said, I think that might also be the Gargoyle King.
Well, no, I guess it'd be like that because he snatches up naughty children and throws them in his sack.
Which, I got some more coming.
That's what I always pictured. I was like, is that true? Am I making that up?
So, Krampus also carries chains, which are believed to symbolize the binding of the devil by the Christian church. And the chains are sometimes accompanied with bells of various sizes, and he thrashes them for a dramatic effect.
I mean...
So he's like, whoosh, whoosh, with the jingle bells. With more pagan origins are the Rutin, I think is how you say it, which are bundles of birch branches that Krampus carries, and these are what he occasionally swats children with.
he just pulls one of his eyes like, whoosh.
Yeah.
I think Lucy needed that too.
But the birch branches are sometimes replaced with a whip.
Oh. So, just straight up whip.
Yeah.
If he's feeling froggy.
Yeah. So sometimes it's birch branches and then sometimes it's just a whip. And Krampus also appears sometimes with a sack or a basket attached to his back. And this is to take off with evil children so he could go on to drown them or eat them or just transport them to hell.
Huh.
So,
just whatever he's feeling like that day.
So Krampus's frightening presence was suppressed for many years due to the Catholic Church forbidding the jarring celebrations of him. And the Krampus festivities were banned by Chancellor Dollfuss after the Austrian Civil War and even as recent as 2006. Because an Austrian child psychologist argued that the violence and demonic imagery associated with Krampus celebrations was not suitable for children, and that there should be a ban on Krampus.
I mean, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Is...
to scare them into acting right.
Because, like, you think Santa Claus, it's like, oh, you're gonna get a lump of coal. Yeah, no, you're gonna die. You're gonna die if you misbehave. You were gonna be gutted.
Yeah.
Or stuffed in a sack and
drugged
to hell.
Yeah.
I imagine it's like Jason. In his Jason X with a
sleeping
bag. Thump, 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 thump. I'm gonna behave. Cole, I'm like, whatever.
Get a lump of coal.
That's lump of coal. Okay. You're gonna give me a lump of coal.
I read something that said, like, he works kind of with Saint Nick, kind of together. And they put out a pair of shoes out, and it'll either get filled with stuff, or I think it said it got filled with a stick, and that's like a sign that Krampus is coming.
Oh, so you're like, oh, God. So St. Nick's going around, and he's like, oh, no, here's your good stuff, here's a stick, and you're like, oh, crap. And then you just have to wait for Krampus to come get you.
Yeah. I could have misread that, but
I think that tradition, I want to say, I've heard of it in, like Holland, it's a big thing.
Yeah, and it's like clogs, I'm pretty sure.
I could be wrong. We could be wrong.
Yeah.
Don't hate us, but...
So, Krampus has kind of been having a revival over the past few years. Most think it's because of the bah humbug attitude in pop culture and people searching for ways to celebrate the Yuletide season in not so traditional ways. Even though I feel like that's kind of more traditional.
Right, that's going back.
But so in the United States, people are welcoming the dark side of Christmas with Krampus by movies and special Krampus-based episodes and shows. And in cities like Washington and New Orleans, they actually had local Krampusschnatz. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's the same type of kind of festival over in Austria and Germany that the Perchta kind of came from.
Is that the one you can look up pictures on Google and it's all the scary costumes and stuff?
Because some of those are actually from the Perchta ones, and then some of those are the Krampus ones.
Oh, okay. So that's why they are so similar.
Yeah. So in Austria, they're actually attempting to commercialize the harsh persona of Krampus with chocolates and figurines and collectible horns.
I need a Krampus chocolate and a horn.
Yeah.
And a figurine.
Let's just
get them all.
I actually have a Krampus pop figure.
It's
special
flocked.
edition. It's flocked. Yeah.
You gotta get his fuzz in there. He works hard on that.
I love my flocked Krampus.
So there are actually complaints, though, that Krampus is becoming too commercialized and so popular that it's actually making him lose his spark because of the rekindling of all his popularity. That he's kind of, like, getting desensitized of being as scary and prominent as he was.
I mean, well, then maybe they need to talk about Frau Perchta.
Yeah.
And
it's her time to shine again.
She ain't no softie.
No. So
and he can be in the back while she's getting him, and he can be whipping his chains around.
Yeah, with the bells.
For the bells, for dramatic effect. Like the Mannheim Steamroller. And she's like slicing and dicing and stuffing them with pine cones and peas. Lucy.
Something I also found interesting, which kind of ties Frau Perchta back into, like, more modern times and back into with Krampus, is in 2017 there was a movie that was released called Mother Krampus, and it was based off Frau Perchta. So, kind of ties it all back
Scary
together.
holiday movie.
Yeah.
I like a good scary holiday movie.
We'll have to look it up.
Yeah. The Frau. Knocking at your door.
So, just I don't know, in a sense of, would I rather be met with Krampus or Frau Perchta? I don't know.
I think I'd rather just be a good kid.
Yeah.
If you're a good kid, you don't have to worry about either one of them.
Yeah. Actually, I guess I would rather, like, deal with Krampus, because if you're a good kid, then you don't have to deal with him. You still have to meet Frau Perchta for her to give you the coins.
That would be, like, terrifying.
Yeah.
And she's like, come here, little girl.
Come here, child.
Yeah, come here, child. Let me look upon you.
It gives you a handful of bloody coins.
And then she's like, let her watch. I want her to watch. Don't you block your child's view while I get her friend.
Honestly, I think I would rather deal with Krampus. Maybe. I don't know.
I would have ruined myself right there at the end, because after spending all that time with Lucy, I'd been like, I want to watch, and then I would have died, because she would have been like, that's a
willful.
terrible thing to do, whoosh, and like, get me.
You a bad child.
Yeah, you're a bad child now, because you wanted to see it. I'd be like, but she made me sleep on a cot, and stole my pee.
And blamed her spilled juice on me.
And I missed the ball dropping.
I was trying to find a story about, like, the tongue cutting of lying children. And
I was hoping it was going to happen to Lucy.
Well, honestly, that's what I thought was going to happen. I didn't think she was going full on slicing.
Like, she's going to shove her hand right down her mouth hole.
Well, when you said shoved off the stuff off the table, I thought she was shoving those in her mouth for a second.
No.
I thought that for a minute. I was like, oh gosh, okay, that's new.
With the pee, and then the pee on top. So she just shoves knickknacks and magazines down her throat, and then boink.
My thing is
in her nostril.
You got
in her nostril. Pink.
You got 2 warnings to run along, because that wasn't your belief.
Yeah.
She gave you 2 chances. 2.
And she was like, where's my presents? Well, you'll never get presents again, kid.
Also, that's a brave... I will say, you a brave little thing that you're... This creepy figure that came into this house and even is scaring adults, and you...
wave your pee in her face.
And talk back to her and all that stuff.
I'm the princess. Well,
I'm surprised she didn't call Frau Perchta a peasant.
Yeah. You bow to me tonight.
But Frau Perchta and Krampus are just the beginning of all the creepy Yuletide stories that you're going to be hearing this month. So
that was a good kickoff to the holiday season.
Yeah.
And so with that, happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Until next time,
Remember, you can find us on
Our own website,
Facebook,
Instagram,
YouTube,
Twitter.
and even Pinterest.
links are in the description.
As always,
Stay weary.
stay leery.
And stay eerie.